So first off, to get started, let me ask you a question. Did you take the SAT this weekend? So here's a poll for you. Okay, waiting just a couple more seconds. All right, it looks like most of you actually didn't take the SAT this weekend, which is pretty awesome then. And just so I get a sense of who you are, let's see. What grade are you guys in? Are you a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, or somebody else? Okay. So it looks like most of you are juniors. That means most of you are coming to this webinar just at the right time because you still have quite a bit of time left, just about a year left to get your SAT or ACT scores down. Awesome. So let's start with our presentation then. So you want to go to college. So college requires a bunch of different things. So to start with, your GPA or your class ranking is going to matter. Your extracurricular activities. So if you play a sport, if you sing, if you play an instrument, if you volunteer, all that stuff is going to matter on your college application. Your teacher recommendations are also going to matter. So that's going to give colleges a chance to see what other people think about you and your work ethic. Your personal statement, that's going to be basically what is what you can say to colleges about yourself, how you can hook them into taking you on as a student. And then the reason why we're here tonight, standardized testing. And then there's another portion that's important, the SAT subject test. That's important for students who want to go to an elite university. So they consider that very heavily as well. So why the SAT? Well, think about it this way. Every year, about 3 million people apply to college, right? So how are they going to compare Johnny in California to Mary in Florida if both of them have really high GPAs and both of them do the same exact things after school? They need a way to standardize this. So the SAT and the ACT are ways for college admissions offices to understand how Johnny and Mary compare to each other. So that's one reason why you should take the SAT. Another reason why you should take the SAT? Money. Every year, millions and millions of dollars are offered in scholarships. And if somebody has a really high SAT score, they can earn money for school. There's a story of somebody who once earned a 2,400 and he got more than $200,000 worth of scholarships. So that's something for you to keep in mind as you're on this road to doing well on the SAT. So let's start with a few basics about the SAT. So the test is 3 hours and 45 minutes long, so it's not an easy test. It takes a lot of time. There's 175 questions, not including the experimental questions. So if you're talking about the entire test, that's going to be about 200 questions for you to take. I will answer your question in just a second, Dave. There are 10 sections. There are 3 critical reading, 3 math, 2 writing, 1 essay, and the experimental section, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And then there's also a wrong answer penalty on this test. There's minus a quarter point for everything you get wrong. So it's a good idea not to guess if you don't have any idea what's going on. In the class of 2011, 1.65 million people took the SAT. And that's only about 45% of the people, so not everybody took the test. And then the average SAT score is roughly 1,500, and you can see the breakdown right there. So let me take a second to stop and answer this question. What was the answer for the professor's hand gesture? Thanks for doing this. I'm actually not sure what you're talking about, so if you stick around afterwards, you can ask me and we can clarify what your specific question is. How does that sound? Okay. So things to know about the December SAT, the one that I just took. Roughly 200,000 people took the test, either in the United States or across the world. And then of those 200,000, about 49% were seniors taking a last minute exam, 37% were juniors, and then 14% were other. I was one of the others. I was too old to be included in this statistic, and I've also heard stories of elementary school and junior high school students that took this test as well as some sort of talent program. And then this time around, there were actually two different tests administered in the country. So I got one test, and I can definitely provide you some insight about that test. I don't know as much information about the other test because obviously I did not take it. And then the last thing, here's how I felt about the test. I thought it ranged in the difficulty level of medium to easy, which means the curve is probably going to be a little bit harsher this time around. So this is the question I get a lot when I tell people that I took the SAT on Saturday. So why did you take the SAT? Well, there are a couple reasons why. One is because it's been 8 years since I've taken the test, and I'm actually a professional tutor. I tutor kids with the ACT and the SAT, and I felt that it was pretty important for me to understand the mindset of what they were going through. And it's been a while since I took the test. Also, because I'm actually kind of a test prep nerd, I actually kind of enjoyed that stuff. So to keep a long story short, I took the SAT because I wanted to. Yuma, you say you have to leave soon. That's fine. If you want, you can email me or email. You can email me or email the registration. You should have gotten our email in the registration, so you can do that and email if you have any questions. Okay, so now we're going to actually go on to the test, and we're going to start with everybody's favorite section, critical reading. So we're going to start with a little bit of vocabulary here. These are, the SAT draws on a pool of about 6,000 to 10,000 words. And so in order for you to be 100% prepared for the vocabulary that you're going to get on the SAT, you would probably have to spend years studying and memorizing every single word. So I recommend that you don't do that. Instead, I will point out words on the test that I thought were useful to me in some way. For example, the first word, untenable. They didn't actually test this word specifically, but this is a great word. If you find something untenable, that means you find that an argument is not true or not believable or unfounded. So this is a great word to use on your SAT essay. For example, you could find the argument that Lady Gaga is the best pop singer of all time as untenable. So that's a great word for you. Munificent and magnanimous. So the reason why I bring up these two words is because the SAT likes to test words that have similar meaning. In any language, words can only describe so much. There's not going to be some concept that you don't understand. It's just that there's a word describing that concept that you don't understand. So if you can understand how words relate to each other, that's going to help you out a lot. And these two words actually mean generous. Punctilious. This word really threw me for a loop, and I will talk about this word in a second. Nebulous is also a great word. I've seen this on about 5 to 6 different SATs. This word means vague or uncertain. So if something is nebulous, it's not clear or not understandable. Salutary. Salutary is also a very interesting word. I didn't know this word either, but I use my knowledge of other languages to help me out. SALU is a Latin word root that means healthy. So if you find something salutary, that probably means it's healthy. If you know Spanish, for example, salud means health. So salutary means healthy. And then ubiquity. Ubiquity is also a very popular word on the SAT. Ubiquity is used by bloggers now all the time because Facebook is ubiquitous in society. Because Apple products are ubiquitous in society. For example, I find that Apple products are more ubiquitous than actual apples themselves. Here's some words that I found that were on the other tests that students had trouble with. Milieu. This word actually isn't that important, but I put it in because it sounds really cool. It means like your surroundings or your social environment. So, for example, the aroma of cigarettes and baguettes contribute to the milieu that is Paris, France. Milieu. Loquacious. Loquacious falls into the category of words that mean wordy. If you understand the word root LOQ, you know that means words. Sanguine. I put this one in because this one is really interesting. The word root SANG means blood. And one of the definitions of this word is bloody. But confusingly enough, another definition of this word is actually positive or optimistic. So you have this optimistic thing, and you also have blood as a definition. So I thought this word was really interesting. Fastidious. Like I said, the SAT likes to test groups of words. On the second test, the word fastidious goes with the word punctilious. They both mean the same thing, and you'll find out what that means later. Refractory, that means stubborn or hard-headed or obstinate. And then pernicious. Pernicious, if something is healthy, it's salutary. If something is evil or harmful, it is pernicious. Okay, that was a lot of words. Remember, it's not your goal to memorize all these words. It's your goal to understand how these words fit in with the SAT as a whole. Now, I will take a quick break to answer any questions. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, we'll go on then since I don't see any questions. We have a question for you. Richard was known for his blank mannerisms. He paid enormous attention to detail and was blank when it came to appropriate behavior. This is very, very similar to one of the questions I got on the test, and I narrowed it down to 2 answers. So now I'm going to give you the opportunity to try to answer that question. Do you think it was A, meticulous and flippant? Do you think it was B, punctilious and stringent? Couple more votes. Okay, so 2/3 of you thought it was punctilious and stringent, and 1/3 of you thought it was meticulous and flippant. I think I kind of tipped you off when I gave you the word punctilious earlier. So let me close this poll really quickly. So the SAT likes to do one thing. They like to mislead you with the wrong answer choices. So the strategy for this question starts off this way. The key phrase here is attention to detail. They can't give you a sentence completion question without describing the words they want you to choose. So I narrowed it down to 2 words that meant attention to detail. Meticulous, which I knew, and punctilious, which I had no idea what it was about. The other key thing in this sentence is this word, and. So what that means is that means the word before in the first blank and the word after in the second blank have to be related somehow. So if you're meticulous with your mannerisms and you're flippant when it comes to appropriate behavior, that doesn't make sense because flippant means you don't care about appropriate behavior. The reason they included meticulous is because they want to trick you with a word that you know. But in this case, that's not enough because the second word doesn't work in that phrase. The correct answer is B, punctilious. Good job, the 2/3 of you that got that right. Any questions with this one? Okay. So here's some critical reading tips. Like, it's going to be really hard for me to give you a critical reading passage and ask you about them. So I'll just give you some quick tips for when you guys take the test. Mark up your passage. This is true for anything on the SAT. The more you can write, the better you're going to be because you'll have a clear idea of what's going on. Next, your answers need to be supported by the text. Oftentimes, students read a passage, they form an opinion about it, and they use that opinion to answer the question. And that's not what your goal is here. Your goal is to actually answer questions that the text tells you to do. So beware of answer choices that refer to a different part of the passage. This one is really important also because a question might ask you about paragraph 2, but then one of the wrong answer choices might be about paragraph 4, and it will be very tempting because you read paragraph 4 after you read paragraph 2, so it's kind of fresher in your mind. So this goes along with the second thing. Be sure that the text supports the answer that you choose. And usually only one word separates the correct answer from the wrong one. For example, the word not, the word except, the word besides. Sometimes it's just one word, one verb, maybe describes or argues or supports. It's just one word, so that can be really tricky too if you don't read really closely. Okay, now that we're done with critical reading, we're going to move on to everybody's favorite section, math. Okay, any questions before we move on to math? Great. So the thing to note about math is that this section can be done without a calculator. So if you're doing crazy calculations with your calculator and you're getting these decimal places like 2.23579, you're doing something wrong because it can't be that difficult. So I'm going to go over the difficult math questions on the test because I found that strategy really helped me with the difficult questions. Easier ones, those can be studied. Strategy can't be studied because you obviously have to be taught some strategy as to how to do well on the test. So this is an example of a question that was very similar to one that tripped me up on the test. So the question goes, John separates his socks into two groups. He has R socks for his right foot and L socks for his left foot. Both group R and group L have only one blue sock. If John's OCD prevents him from wearing both blue socks at the same time, how many possible combinations of socks can he wear? So you can obviously see why this question was trippy for me. So I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you think this math question is difficult? And in this case, you can choose more than one answer. Does it have too many words? Is it impossible to figure out? Does it have no numbers? Is it confusing? Something else? Just a few more seconds. Okay, so according to you guys, this question has way too many words. Coming in second, it has no numbers and it is confusing. So, unfortunately, with these long questions, there's nothing you can do about that, right? But you can do something about the fact that it has no numbers. So John separates his socks into two groups. He has R socks for his right foot and L socks for his left foot. Whenever you see a question without numbers, here's what I recommend that you do. Plug in numbers. Choose your own easy numbers that you can use to make the question a lot easier. So he has R socks for his right foot, L socks for his left foot. What's an easy number to choose for them? 2. He has 2 socks for his right foot, 2 socks for his left foot. So he has 1 blue sock for his right foot, like the question says. He also has 1 blue sock for his left foot, like the question says. And now you can use your own imagination on the test to decide the color of his other sock. So I say his right sock is purple and his left sock is green. Now, with these, now we figure out how many combinations there are. So we can have a purple and a green sock, purple and a blue sock, a blue and a green sock, and a blue and a blue sock. But what did the question say about it? It said his OCD prevented him from wearing those 2 blue socks together, so bye-bye blue socks. So how many pairs of socks does he have to wear? There are 3 different combinations. Is everybody with me so far? Raise your hand if you're doing okay. Sam's good. Kaylee's good. Good. Okay. Thank you guys for responding. We're going to move on. So if he has 2 right socks and 2 left socks and the answer is 3, we're going to plug them back into the answer choices. So for A, trust me, I studied this and I did my math right. So 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 equals 3 times 3 equals 9. That is not 3. B, 2 minus 1 times 2 minus 1 equals 1 times 1 equals 1. That is also incorrect. C, 2 times 2 minus 1 equals 4 minus 1 equals 3. And that is your correct answer. And if you want, I did the math for the other ones, and they don't equal 3 also. So picking numbers is an awesome strategy, especially when your question doesn't have numbers. In fact, only when your question doesn't have numbers. You should pick numbers. It's a great way to do the question, or it's a great way to check your work. So this is another very difficult question that I encountered on the test. If 9x squared minus y squared equals 17, and x and y are positive integers, what is the sum of x and y? So before we go through this question, I need to ask you this. What is an integer? Please answer now. What is an integer? Is it a whole number? Is it a number that can be expressed in fraction form? Is it any number that is a radical or decimal, or any real number? Awesome. Okay. That's pretty awesome. You guys all got the correct answer. I've actually worked with students who didn't know what an integer was, and when you don't know what an integer is, you can't take the math test because it's fundamental to your understanding of these questions. So we're going to continue on with this question. What is the sum of x and y? What did I say was a good strategy to use? Plugging in numbers, because there are no numbers in this question. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take the equation that the question gave us, and I'm going to rewrite it like this. All I did was move the y to one side and move everything else to the other side. And then I take the square root of both sides and I get that formula. Why is that formula important? Because it makes our life easier. We know that x and y have to be positive integers. So we're going to, which are whole numbers, and we're going to plug in numbers for x to see which works. So for x equals 1, we plug in 1, and then we see that y equals the square root of negative 8. That doesn't even exist, so you know that 1 doesn't work. We plug in 2, and we see that y equals square root of 19. Is that a positive integer? No. Then we plug in for 3, and we see that y equals the square root of 64, which is equal to 8. Now, I know I'm going through this fast, but the math calculation isn't the important part. The important part is that you understand the concept of plugging in numbers. And so since we found two integers that work together, we can start getting rid of all this stuff. And then we have x plus y equals 3 plus 8, which is 11. And the correct answer is D. Does anybody have any questions? I went through this a little quickly. Okay, Kaylee, feel free to type in your question. Roman also asked a really good question. He asked if we could rewrite the question in such a way that you square root both sides. And yes, you can. You can do, or factor both sides. You can also do that. That's actually the proper algebraic way of doing it. But I want to show the strategy for another way if you didn't know how to factor both sides. Will we have enough time to do all this on the test? Yes, Kaylee, I'll type this so everybody can see Kaylee's question. Yes, you will have enough time to do this on the test if you manage your time wisely, because there are actually questions that I found on the test that took me 20 seconds maximum to answer, and that was me using my strategy. And then you can spend 2 minutes on this question, especially if you're really good with your calculator and plugging in those numbers. I'm just giving you an option. This was a question 20, I think, question 20 out of 20, so you know that it was a level 5 difficulty also. Okay. Awesome. So what's the moral of the story for this math lesson? Plug in numbers. That's going to be your best friend. You can plug in numbers on up to about a third of the SAT questions. Now that we're done with math, there's only one section left, and I bet you guys know what that is. SAT writing. So here's a quick little story. When I took the SAT the first time around, the writing section wasn't part of the actual SAT yet. They introduced it the year after I graduated from high school. So here's a sentence that made me laugh out loud when I actually read it. It was one of the questions. It was very similar to one of the questions. Sorry, it's not the actual question. I once heard the story of an old man who found 1 million pennies using a metal detector in the cornfields of Iowa. So let me ask you this. Do you know why this sentence made me laugh? I once heard the story of an old man who found 1 million pennies using a metal detector in the cornfields of Iowa. I'm missing a couple votes, guys. Anybody else? Okie dokie. Most of you know why I laughed. So here's why. I've never heard of pennies who use metal detectors. Pennies don't have arms or legs, and pennies don't need a metal detector because they're already made of metal. So that's why I laughed out loud. So the problem with this question is that there's a modifier issue. What's a modifier? A modifier is a word or phrase that modifies or changes the meaning of another word or phrase in the sentence. So for example, old is a modifier. It modifies the word man because the man could be a young man, an old man, a middle-aged man, etc., etc., etc. Using a metal detector, that also describes something, right? So the rule with modifiers is place modifiers as close as you can to the subject or the object they modify. What is using the metal detector? Not the pennies, but it was the old man. So here's a substitute sentence that I suggest. I once heard the story of an old man who used a metal detector and found 1 million pennies in the cornfields of Iowa. Yeah? Okay, this is just one option. There are other options for this too. Obviously, when it comes to the test, they'll give you options, and then you choose the one that correctly places the modifier next to the subject it modifies. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, let's move on. So when I was preparing this webinar, I got a request for identifying sentence error questions. These are pretty hard, so we can go through them. The biggest issues I saw in the test when it came to identifying sentence error questions was that verbs came up a lot, and there are 3 types of verb problems: verb tense, verb subject agreement, and verb parallelism. If you don't know what that means, that's okay. You'll learn. We have idioms. Idioms are the hardest thing in the English language because sometimes we have stupid phrases that don't make any sense. For example, you argue for something you're passionate about. You argue against something you hate. You argue with somebody when you're talking at them. You can argue at somebody if they're not listening to you. So there are all these things that the English language do funny things with. And there's no rule, there's no rhyme or reason, but it's all you can do. And then the other thing is pronoun antecedent agreement. If you don't know what an antecedent or pronoun is, don't worry, we'll go over one of those questions. So here's a question similar to one that you will get on any SAT because they love something. The energy given off by highly annoying and moody teenagers are very effective in causing others to feel distressed, thereby making life miserable for all parties. No error. And don't worry, I'm not talking about you guys. So what was the thing that I said is super important? Nope. And just in case you forgot, verbs. Verbs are the most commonly tested part of speech on the SAT writing. So here's my suggestion for you. Whenever you see a verb, you want to make sure it agrees with the subject. So let's go through this sentence. The energy given off by highly annoying and moody teenagers are. So there's a verb right there. Now, what is its subject? The test wants you to think that teenagers is the subject, but that is not the case. What you can do is, as you see, I cross out by highly annoying and moody teenagers. This is what we call a prepositional phrase. You can cross off any phrase that starts off with a preposition, and the sentence should still make sense without it. So without the preposition, the sentence becomes, the energy given off are very effective. Are is supposed to match with energy. Does it? No, it doesn't. So the correct answer is A is wrong because it should be changed to the singular tense. Any questions, guys? Raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, everybody's with me. Good. Here's another question that we will see on the test. The cost of graduating from American universities is approximately 5 times what it used to be when my parents were going through it. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys know what is wrong, but let's go through the strategy. Every time you see a verb, make sure it agrees with its subject. So in this case, I cross out from American universities because that's a prepositional phrase. We see that the subject is cost. So that works, right? Now, the other thing I see here is the pronoun it. Whenever you see a pronoun, you should ask, what is it? Is it the cost? Is it graduating? Is it universities? Is it times? Is it? Is it my parents? Is it no error? In this case, it's not clear what it is, right? So the wrong answer, or in this case, the correct answer is going through it, because it is actually referring to when my parents were going through the process of college. Any questions on this one? So pronouns are meant to replace a noun, right? And when pronouns replace the wrong noun, or when pronouns don't replace a noun at all, there's something wrong with them. So the moral of the story for the writing section: watch out for verbs, pronouns, idioms, and pennies with metal detectors. Does anybody have any questions? Great. So we've gone through all the questions of the test. So just a little bit about myself. I work with Preply.com, and we are a platform for online tutoring. So if you have more questions, you can visit our website. And I'm going to take a brief moment to ask you guys to answer this question for me. What are your opinions about online tutoring? Take a second, just type to me what you think about online tutoring. Is it cheap? Is it expensive? Have you never heard about it before? Have you done it a million times before? I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Online tutoring, guys. What are your opinions about online tutoring? I noticed, Missy Elliott, you asked a couple of questions. If you want to stick around afterwards, I can help you with those questions. Maybe not the Whoopi Goldberg writing question, because I didn't see that one. I didn't have that test. So just to know a couple of your comments about online tutoring. I heard that online tutoring is effective when the student wants to learn. That's great. That's very true, right? Any tutoring is only going to be effective if the student wants to do it. I've worked with a lot of students who were not interested in tutoring, and obviously their scores didn't increase as much as they could have. Haven't done it, but this platform looks very promising. I would have if I knew about it before my SAT. Well, hopefully you still have time for future tutoring because it's very effective. And I never heard about it, but it sounds like a good idea considering you're saving time and money that would be used for transportation. That's absolutely true. So here's a little snapshot of our website. So here's the thing we offer. We offer quality tutoring from $8 an hour. We can offer low prices because we are not a big company that sells you our product. We're bringing you tutors that directly want to work with you. Another thing is we verify all our tutors. I personally go through every single tutor and check what they have to offer students. We actually have tutors from Harvard. We have tutors from MIT. We have tutors from Northwestern and Duke and other great schools. We have professional tutors who've been doing this for years and years and years. And then we also have a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you and your tutor don't click or there's something wrong and you want to move on, that's fine. We'll give you your money back. Okay, and here is just a little comparison between us and some of the other guys. So I won't name them, but I will call them K, P, and R. So I've done a little bit of research, and here's how much these people charge per class for one-on-one online tutoring. If you break that down into hourly rate, here's how much they charge per hour. So compare that with our tutors who are far cheaper than this. And here's one thing, no personalization. Each of these companies gives you what they put together in a book. The tutors cannot stray from those their curriculum, and I know because I worked for 2 out of these 3 companies in the past. No knowledge of who your tutor is. You pay $7,800 for P, and you don't even know who your tutor is, right? Our platform allows you the chance to see who your tutor is and get a feeling of who they are before you actually work with them. And then no money back policies. Now, some companies will say that they have a higher score guarantee or something like that, but the problem is, even if your score doesn't go up, they don't give you your money back. They just let you take the same class over again. Okay, here's an example of one of the tutors we have on our platform. His name is Joey. He went to Northwestern University. He's a math whiz. He's had about 8 years of tutoring experience. Oh, Dave asked a question, do you offer application coaching as well? Actually, a lot of our tutors are have worked with a lot of students on college admissions tutoring. So if you want to send me an email, I'll give you my email at the end of this presentation, and I can hook you up with some of those tutors who have that experience. Here's another one of our tutors. If you'd rather work with a woman, some people have preference over the gender of their tutors. We have Annie. She owns her own tutoring company. She has her master's degree. She has a lot of experience also. Okay. And here's something we're offering the people who are attending our webinar personally. You get a 30% discount off any of our tutors, and just use the coupon code HIPPO when you purchase services from any one of our tutors. And the coupon is valid until the end of the day on Wednesday, December 5th. Okay, so you have 48 hours. That doesn't mean you have to start tutoring right away, but you can contract one of our tutors and then schedule tutoring for maybe January after you're done with your winter vacation, or you can start in the middle of winter vacation if you're that interested. So we have that option for you as well. Okay. So now that we've done that, these are some frequently asked questions that I've encountered when it comes to the SAT. So we'll go through those, and as soon as we go through those, I'll open up the floor to you to ask your own personal questions. How many times should I take the test? Everybody asks this question. The answer I give to that is 2 times, 3 times max. Generally speaking, especially if you study hard and work with a tutor, your score will go up the 2nd time. On the 3rd time, your score will probably go up a little bit more, but after the 3rd time, you've probably maxed out your score. Some people take it 5, 6, or 7 times, and that's just nothing you should be worrying about, because there are better things after the 3rd time that you should be worrying about besides taking the SAT one more time. Unless you're like me and like taking the test and like spending money and stuff like that. What about the ACT? This is a very popular question. Both tests have their merits. Both tests are going to be different for each student. I know people who scored almost a perfect score on the ACT and did horribly on the SAT, and vice versa. It depends about you. You can either consult with me by sending me an email, or you can take both tests and see which one works better for you. Those are your 2 options. So I can't tell you outright which one is better for you. What about the experimental section? So here's College Board's official stance on the experimental section. They're like, don't try to figure it out. Answer every question like you would, like it was a real question. So when I took the test on Saturday, I got an experimental critical reading section, and it was probably the hardest reading passage I ever got. So it was pretty obvious which one it was. And then when I looked back on the test, if I'd counted the experimental question or experimental section, I would have had way too many questions in the critical reading portion of my SAT because there are always the same number of questions. So actually, most students are able to figure out the experimental section, usually after the fact, sometimes in the middle of the passage. But if a question or if a passage strikes you as completely weird, probably is the experimental section. It's either too easy or too difficult. Which months have the easiest tests? For some reason, students and parents have gotten the idea that one month may offer easier tests than another month. And the truth is, it isn't true. College Board randomizes their tests. So in December, one year you might get a super easy test. Next year you might get a super difficult test. And there is actually data that proves this. So don't go for a second and believe that, if you register for an April test, that you're going to have an easy test or that you're going to have a hard test. You just have to do your best every time you take the test. And then this one, College Board and ETS are evil institutions whose main purpose is to torture innocent students. Well, that may or may not be true, but there's nothing you can do about it, right? So the best thing you can do for yourself is to prep to the best of your abilities. There's nothing you can do about it unless there's also the option of going to a test optional college, but those are few and far between also. So it's your turn. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. Okay, I will get to you in just a second, Sam. Let me go through some of these questions that I have first. Okay, what was the answer? Can we write? Will we have enough? Thanks. Do you have a mic, Sam? Here. Sam, are you there? Hello? Oh, you don't have a mic? Okay, why don't you type your question then? I was out when you went over the writing section. Sam wants to know, is draw on a correct idiom? It was on the test. So draw on is only correct when you are drawing on a piece of paper. I saw this discussion before, and I think the correct idiom people want to talk about is draw upon. If you're drawing upon a memory or thinking about something that happened before, you should draw upon something. Does this help you, Sam? Are there any other questions? No questions whatsoever? Oh, okay. Tao has a question. Yeah. So Missy asked a question that I don't know right now, and I would have to talk to you after because Missy isn't here anymore. Okay. Sam, you can type your question. Tao, I'm gonna unmute you. Hello, you there? Tao? Hello, Tao. No mic. Okay. So I will let you guys, I'll let you type your question, Tao. Sam asked another question. This was improving paragraphs. Remember some people or such people? Okay. I don't actually remember this question, but I will offer you some clarification. Some people is when you're referring to a group of people. Just a random group of people. So for example, some people like to eat ice cream. Some people like to walk in the park. Some people hate movies. So that's some people. Such people is when you're referring to a group of people. A specific group. Let's say a specific group of people. So for example, there are some people who don't like ice cream. Such people should not be allowed to enter the ice cream shop. There are some people who like to walk in the park during winter when it's 0 degrees out. Such people are out of their mind. So it just depends on what you're referring to. If you're referring to an unspecified group of people, that's some people. When you're referring to a specific group of people, that's such people. Okay. Dave asked, could you give us your email? Yeah, I will in just a second, as soon as I get through these questions. Man asks, do you know if the answer for the CR section about Pluto was appreciative? And unfortunately, I do not, but if you send me an email, I can research that for you because that was not the test I got. Tao asks, how many times can you use a fee waiver? Actually, that answer I'm not too familiar with. I'm assuming you can apply as many times as you want, but it depends on how many times they offer you that fee waiver. They should allow you at least 2 times. Any other questions? Was the penny question considered difficult? That's an interesting question. I think that would have been a medium difficulty question. If you're not aware of that issue, then you wouldn't know to look out for it. When I first started taking the SAT writing, I was scoring in the mid 600s because I didn't know what modifiers were. Once I knew what modifiers were, my score jumped up 100 points. So I think modifiers are important. Man asks, did I have a passage about a math professor? I think we had different tests, Man. Unfortunately, I did not. You're welcome, Kaylee. You're so polite. Always thanking me. Anybody else? All right, if there are no other questions then, I'm going to wrap up this presentation. Just a reminder that you get 30% off any of our tutors if you just use the code HIPPO within the next 2 days, 48 hours. And my email's at the bottom. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. It's joey@preply.com. joey@preply.com. I'm pretty good when I reply to emails. Anything else, guys? Raise your hand or forever hold your peace. Yes, Sam. And just FYI, guys, if there's a brief survey after this presentation that if you could fill out, that'd be awesome. We want to do this a little bit more often to help the community out. So we need your feedback. There are 3 committees. One committee has 20 people. The second one has 20 people. The last committee has 30 people. If 3 people are chosen to form a group, how many combinations are possible? I actually didn't get a question like this, but this one's pretty easy. So I think the question would have to specify if 3 people are chosen to form a group, 1 person from each group, how many people are possible? Yeah, 1 person from each committee was chosen to form a group. Okay, so this one's easy. You just take 20 people from the first committee, 20 people from the second committee and 30 people from the last committee. Multiply them together, get 12,000. That is what we call a combination / permutation / probability question. Those will always be on the test. This one's actually one of the easier ones. You're welcome, sir. Okay, if you guys don't have any other questions, so you can visit us on Facebook also. Preply has a Facebook account. We post a lot of informational content like words of the day, questions, that sort of thing. So feel free to go to Facebook, like us on preply.com, and you'll get a lot more information. The web address is facebook.com/preplycom. I'm going to type it in the chat so everybody can see it also.